All right, welcome to Big 12 Insiders Fall Camp. We appreciate you guys joining in. Today we got McClain Baxley from Oklahoma State. I appreciate it, McClain. Thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Absolutely. It's in the thick of fall camp, which is an exciting time.
Absolutely. Football is here, people. Football is here. So we've talked before, obviously, several times, and again, we appreciate you making the time. Oklahoma State is one of those teams. I feel like they got a little bit of justice, McClain, in the AP poll that just came out. They were ranked 17th. Now, you could say it needs to be a little bit higher, and so many of these polls out here, Oklahoma State is not picked to win the conference. And with everything coming back, I know I've talked to you about it. I think it's a miscarriage of justice that they're not being picked higher than what they were. I've seen them as low as 6th in some, and I think that is just absolutely ludicrous. But, it is what it is. Kind of give me a feel of what the overall of the program right now, what the overall, where they're at as far as camp and the overall feel of the team right now.
Yeah, well, like you said, they return a lot of guys on both sides of the ball. I think 19 total starters on offense and defense. And so these guys that have been around the program, they know what to do, they know what to expect. And so I think that the big thing this fall in fall camp is really just honing in on the small things, improving the small things. There's not a lot of teaching going on. There's not a lot of installing of an offense or a defense or new plays or anything like that. It's more just getting better in the small things. And so that when the time season rolls around, they've taken the next step and gotten better than they were last year, which I guess is the goal going year to year. You want to get better than they were last year. So that's where they kind of are. The expectation is for them to, win the Big 12 and make the college football playoff, whether that making the playoff as a champion or as an at-large bid. We talked with Mike Gundy on Saturday, and he made it pretty clear that the Big 12 should get multiple bids, and he hopes to be one of them. When the playoff rolls around in December. So that's kind of the mindset. It's like win now. We brought everybody back. We got a lot of talent. Got a lot of depth. Got a lot of experience. Let's do something with it.
Absolutely. Obviously, Ollie Gordon coming back, Doak Walker Award winner, best running back in college football. I don't even think there's a whole lot of debate in that, or at least there shouldn't be, in my opinion. Having said that, what are some of the key strengths for the offense coming up to this season that Oklahoma State needs to or are trying to focus in on?
Well, obviously, Ollie Gordon, you have him back there. He is the best running back in college football, returning. And obviously, so teams are going to definitely hone in on that. I think, we saw a couple times last year. I think back to the Texas game. I think back to the UCF game in the latter half of the last season where teams just loaded the box and made it very difficult for Gordon to really do much of anything. And so that forces Alan Bowman and the quarterback and the receivers to really step up. And fortunately for Oklahoma State, they've got those receivers to do so. Brennan Presley, Rashad Owens, DeJon Stribling, 3 guys that I think will be all Big 12 by the end of the season in different statures. They all do things a little differently. Presley's a smaller, versatile guy he's a slot back. Can do things in the running game, the jet sweep game. And then, Stribling and Owens are just big, fast guys that can get open, get downfield, and make the play when needed to. So using those parts is going to be critical for this team. Again, they're veterans. All these guys have, played for 2-3 years, whether here or elsewhere, having transferred in like Stribling did from Washington State. Yeah, these guys, are very familiar with each other. They know what to do. And so just putting that on display, it's, Gundy's talked about it a couple times now. He's like, teams are going to try and stop Ollie Gordon. Most teams would be smart to do so. And it's just going to be up to Bowman and this offense to really make the, catches, make the reads, and make them hurt you on the outside, to kind of widen this field so you can get Gordon back involved so you can continue to have success like he did last year.
Got it. Not a lot of talk about the defense. Not saying that the defense isn't good, but there's just not near as much excitement or, like I said, talk about Oklahoma State's defense. What are some of the strengths and some of the things that they're going to try to hone in on defense this year?
Yeah, well, 2 of the guys that have been on almost every single list possible. I think yesterday they both got nominated or on the Bednarik watch list. Today they both were on the Butkus watch list, and that's Nick Martin and Colin Oliver, 2 guys that kind of very different stories. Colin Oliver, was a freshman, all Big 12 freshman of the year back when he was a freshman. And then Nick Martin's a guy that had a breakout season last year, ended up leading the conference in tackles. Nick Martin's definitely that linebacker style. He's going to hit you hard. He's a guy that just loves football and playing the game. Colin Oliver expected to play more on that edge and on around the defensive line and just get to the quarterback. That's kind of his main job, is just to get through there and get in the backfield as soon as possible. So I don't know if he's gonna, if that removes him from contention for the Butkus Award, but those are two guys that in that middle linebacker, in that middle of the defense, are going to be critical and just continue to get better from last year. And two guys that have had really good careers. That this last hoorah, this last dance, should go out with a bang.
Gotcha. Now, speaking of things to be concerned about with on offense or defense, besides health, I mean, that kind of goes without saying. What are some of the things that the pitfalls that Oklahoma State is trying to avoid this year, or maybe clean up on both offense and the defensive side of the football? What are some of their concerns?
I think sticking with defense, their biggest problem last year was the secondary. They played a lot of young guys, a lot of freshmen and redshirt freshmen that had not played a lot with a new defensive coordinator and Brian Nardo. And that is where they got burned a lot, whether that was, deep ball several times a game or they just out of position and missing the call. They got burned a lot, and that was definitely their worst part of last season. So cleaning that up, all these guys have had a full season to play. They've had a full off season to work with, knowing that they are going to start, they are going to contribute a lot. So just getting better than that. And I think, myself and the fan base and even, the coaching staff wants to see this secondary, especially in action. It's one thing to do it in camp against guys, against doing plays that you've seen, for weeks now, but it's a different thing to go against South Dakota State or an Arkansas or a Tulsa or, eventually, Big 12 schools and prove it that you've gotten better. You've made those adjustments and can really understand what didn't work a year ago and what can work this year to really improve. That's probably their weakest link, is that defensive secondary. And then on offense, I struggle to really find one. I think the one thing you could maybe argue is back at quarterback. I think there's
right.
still a battle there with Zane Flores and Garrett Rangel to who is going to be that backup. Should Oklahoma State get out to a big lead in one of these games or a big deficit in one of these games, who's the guy that takes the field first? I think Zane Flores has done a lot to really make that jump over Rangel, who's been here for several years, whereas Flores is a redshirt freshman, was a true freshman last year. So that's kind of their question mark, if you will. I think another thing could be tight ends. They're having to replace Josiah Johnson, who was really good last year. They went out and got Ohio transfer Tyler Foster, who's looked really good in fall camp. And then also freshman Josh Ford, tight end, has also looked really good. So kind of a battle there about who gets the first start using their tight ends. They don't use their tight ends a ton. In the passing game, you think of an Oscar Delp or a Brock Bowers of years past across the country. They're not going to be doing that, but just having an extra offensive lineman so that you can create holes for Gordon or can give Bowman extra time to find those receivers.
Gotcha. I mean, you mentioned it earlier. Mike Gundy said, the ultimate goal, obviously, win the Big 12. But getting to the college playoff or college football playoff, regardless of whether it's if you win the conference or if an at large, whatever the case may be, saying that obviously that would define your season getting in there. If that were to fall short, or because I believe that the what I was going to ask is that what defines a good season? Well, I think that's kind of it. If it were to fall short and they didn't reach that, what would be some of the reasons that Oklahoma State wouldn't be able to achieve that?
They're Oklahoma State. I think back to 2011, the loss in Iowa State. That there's kind of a fluke game that they lost.
Right.
I think back to 2021 when they were a yard short against Baylor in Arlington to get to the playoff. I mean, this is a team that this is my second year on the team or second year on the beat, and I'm like, this is a team that should do it. And all these fans are like, yeah, but we're Oklahoma State. We have a curse. We can't get to that national relevance that we're craving so badly. So that's kind of the thing that's in their way. Then also, I mean, the Big 12 is a conference full of parity. Obviously, Utah, Kansas State, and Oklahoma State, I think, are the upper threshold, and they're in a tier of their own. But just below them, I mean, there's West Virginia, UCF, Arizona.
Well, dang it. Hello.
That was weird. I don't know what happened.
I don't know. The Wi-Fi.
Chrome just
I don't know. But I'll start again. I'll ask you the question again.
Okay.
And we'll just start from there.
All
right. 3, 2, 1. So you mentioned earlier that, Mike Gundy kind of defined the season or a successful season as getting to the conference championship, winning it, but more importantly, getting to the college football playoff, which I think he's right. Big 12 deserves at least a minimum of 2 teams in there. And we know about the parity of the Big 12, so maybe more. We'll see. We'll see how the college football season plays out. Having said that, what would be something that would, if Oklahoma State does not get there and they don't get to those goals that they have, what would be one of the reasons that they wouldn't get there? What does that look like?
Well, one of the things is they're Oklahoma State. You think back to 2011 with the loss to Iowa State that kept them out of the BCS championship. You think back to 2021 when they were, about a yard short against Baylor in the Big 12 championship. These are things that just happen. I mean, I've been around the team a couple years now, and I'm like, this team should meet these goals. They should be one of the top teams in the country. And the fan base says, well, hold up. We're Oklahoma State. Things can just continue.
Right.
Don't go our way. If they continue, we're cursed a little bit. So that's one thing. And then also, like you said, the parity of this conference. I think, Utah, Kansas State, Oklahoma State are definitely in a tier of their own. I think those 3 have definitely separated themselves. But then there's, 3 or 4 teams below them. I think West Virginia, Arizona, UCF, and then, maybe a fluke team that could get their way into that conversation where if you're an Oklahoma State team and you've got 3 or 4 losses, or if you're a Kansas State or a Utah, if you've got 3 or 4 losses, I'm not sure, unless you're Big 12 championship, unless you're Big 12 champion, I don't know. I don't know if you're getting the playoffs. So those are a couple factors. If multi losses and things kind of don't go their way, but on paper, this is a team that is built, and they've all come back with the sole goal of winning the Big 12 and going to the college football playoff.
Absolutely. And like I said, I think Oklahoma State is one of those teams where it's really underrated. Like I said, AP poll, which this time of year polls don't mean a lot. Having said that, I just think Oklahoma State not getting the national recognition or even the Big 12 recognition that I think they deserve, little mind-boggling, but we'll see how the season plays out. Last question here for you. A lot of teams, their schedule, there's usually kind of a defining moment or a defining game in their season. Oh, you look at Oklahoma State's schedule, it doesn't look like the most daunting, but early, yeah, it's pretty tough. And let's just take a look at that. Is there a game specifically, or are there multiple games that might define Oklahoma State's season?
Yeah, I mean, by October, we'll know exactly who this team is. We'll know exactly where they're going for playoffs. I mean, to open, South Dakota State, Arkansas, Tulsa, and then Utah and Kansas State. I mean, those two games especially. I mean, I think they will handle their business out of conference. But I mean, those 2 games, they host Utah on the 21st, and then go to Manhattan. If they're 1-1 or 2-0 in those games, I think they pretty much, again, unless something happens, I think they pretty much secure a bid to the Big 12 championship by winning one of those games against K-State or Utah. And the rest of the season, the back half of the season is really manageable. I think people kind of worry about West Virginia coming to town just because that game last year was so fluky and weird. And they've got some good talent on the field. But, yeah, I mean, those first 2 Big 12 games are really going to define the season and should make the second half of the season a little less exciting if things go their way. But it can also make it more exciting if things don't go their way. So, yeah, I mean, they definitely got, those first 5 or 6 weeks are going to be a gauntlet. No buys in there. They play the 2-time defending FCS national champion. They play an SEC team, both those games at home. They have a road game, and then they, host Utah for what should be, top 15 game. College game day maybe in town. I mean, it's just a national game that will have post-game significance within the first month of the season, which is a big deal.
Absolutely. So, well, thanks, McClain, again, and we appreciate you giving your time today. Like I said, I think Oklahoma State's got something cooking. We all know that Mike Gundy is one of the best coaches, not just in the Big 12, but in the country. But I think the program gets really underrated, just like Mike Gundy gets underrated on how good a coach he is. Really looking forward to seeing the Cowboys this season, McClain. Thank you for taking the time today.
Sure thing.